Hey sis, welcome to the Sisterhood, Soul, and Strategy podcast, a space for women building businesses that feel as good as they look. I'm Steph, a small town girl from Wisconsin with big dreams to positively impact the world. This podcast is from the heart, where we share real conversations about building intentional businesses that thrive in every season. And the best part, we talk both soul and strategy, and we wrap it all up in sisterhood. Because let's be real, business is more fun in community. So no matter your age or stage of small business ownership, you stumbled upon this podcast for a reason. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so honored and excited to be joined today by my dear friend who I have been talking about with so many people and even on the podcast about this subconscious somatic embodiment work I've been doing. And I'm having a hard time explaining it myself. So we're so excited to learn more about it with you, Jamie, my dear friend. Jamie,
Hello.
welcome.
Hello. I know, even I have a hard time explaining it just because it's subconscious, right?
Yeah.
It's not logical, it's not literal, and we're so used to being like hyper cognitive. And as we were talking about, it's very feminine work. It's us actually tapping into our bodies instead of just strictly living out of the mental body, out of our mind.
Yeah, and we can't think our way through this.
No.
It actually doesn't work,
No. It
which
doesn't
is
work.
very challenging. And I think that is so hard for so many of us. And I know predominantly my podcast audience is women.
Yeah.
So I think this conversation is really going to resonate with them because we live in a very masculine, predominant world. But in order to be able to tap into our body, we really do need to like soften and release some of that like exterior shell that many of us wear all day long. And we should preface this by saying that this conversation is coming directly after one of my sessions with you. So I think we will dig into kind of what came through
Yeah.
in my own session today. But if you could even just explain to our listeners how you did to me, even in our first session, of how there are these different parts of who we are. And through this work, what we're doing is really making it okay for these different versions of ourselves or parts of ourselves or emotions to still live with us, but not like take over.
Yes. So the way I like to describe it is we have this forward facing self that everybody gets to see. The part of us or the side of us that we feel comfortable with everyone seeing, the socially acceptable side of us. And my goodness, I think like that looks like, especially for women, being perfect, being on, even with our appearance and our bodies, like looking a certain way, being just so that we're safe in the world. But underneath all of that lives the truth of who we are. If you think about it, we are like our perfectionism isn't actually who we are.
Right.
Our like strictness with our bodies, that isn't actually who we are. The reason that we have like this forward facing self is because it could have been our parents, it could have been society, it could have been our school systems, any and all of it shaped us to be just so that we would be accepted in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from more of like a parts work lens, we have people on average have anywhere between like 30 to 100 fragmented selves. We've done inner work before. I do a lot of inner work, and it's so shocking to see like the parts of us that have been fragmented from our actual self. And what I mean by fragmented is essentially something in our past happened. It could have been a trauma. It could have been an ouch or a hurt that caused us to, or part of our life force to actually sever from our consciousness. And what happens with that is we actually start to live life out of a wound or live life from a place of protection. So think about if I was a little girl and I had really big emotions. And if I was shut down by big emotions, instead of me being like, oh, my parents can't handle my big emotions, that has nothing to do with me, I would take that on as, oof, there's something bad and wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I better shut off my emotions. That part of me gets fractured off, the sensitive aspect of me. And then I
Yeah.
start to live my life being shut down, maybe not crying. I don't allow myself to feel my feelings. And that causes a whole cascade of problems, as we know. So I mean, we can go into way more depth with this, but we fracture ourselves off, usually because of trauma. And in the times that we weren't socially accepted, we took it on as I'm bad, I'm wrong. So I have to abandon that part of myself and then learn how to be in my family system or in society to be safe.
Yeah. And I think something we can talk to as well is like this trauma, right? Like, I think there's two sides of it, right? It's like part of it is like, yes, even just having a moment of embarrassment when
Right.
you're a kid is something that you remember
Mhm.
is a trauma because
Right.
it's changed the way that you approach life and the
Mhm.
lens that you wear. And then I think there's the other side where it's like, well, not everything in life is trauma,
Yep.
right? So
Yes.
like how do you find that balance of figuring out like what was truly traumatic
Mhm.
and figuring out where to kind of draw the line between,
Right.
well, not everything is trauma,
Yep.
but what was.
Right. That is such a good question. Such a good question. The way that I interpret trauma is subjective. So the way that I interpret something happening to me might be very different from how you interpret it. And it also we also have to take into account like background context. So, being humiliated or being embarrassed, for one person, it might just be like, oh, yep, like that's an ouch. Like it's not like a
Mhm.
big traumatic experience. However, if maybe in my history, like humiliation was a part of my past and was something like maybe something that had been happening at home. And then whoop, here it is again. Like that itself could be very highly traumatic
Mhm.
for somebody.
Yeah.
But really, it's so subjective, right? It's
Mhm.
based on our own personal experience and our perception. But I understand what you mean. It's like, I think maybe society has used the word trauma as like a buzzword, and
Yeah.
now every single little thing is labeled as like a trauma.
Right.
And again, it's so individual, it's so subjective. I couldn't tell someone that, well, that's not traumatic.
Right. Yeah, because they weren't
Yeah.
experiencing it through your
Yep.
lens and with the layers of, like you said, like
Yeah.
we never truly know where someone is coming from
Mhm.
because we're only seeing that exterior self that
Right.
first talked about. Talking to how this work is so different than therapy.
Yeah.
Because I do think, as I explain it to someone, sometimes I say, well, it's kind of like therapy, but also we're not just talking through things and we're literally breathing through it. We're
Mhm.
asking questions to it. I've never done like traditional therapy,
Yep.
but I imagine this work is actually very different than just therapy.
Absolutely. Yes, and, like, I always make it so clear that I am not a therapist in any way. I see the work that I do, it's energy healing, it's
Mm,
body healing, it's somatic in nature.
yeah.
And the difference between somatic healing and traditional talk therapy would be, for somatics, we're working directly in the body. I
Mhm.
think sometimes with talk therapy, and I'm in no way bashing talk therapy.
Yeah.
I think,
No, it's just
I've done
different.
talk therapy. I
Yep.
loved it. It was so helpful. I think a lot of that was, at least for me, I can only speak to my personal experience.
Mhm.
It was a lot of skill building. It was learning how to like quite literally set a boundary.
Yeah, sure.
It was talking through like um ways to like work with anxiety and sharing in my experience. It seemed like it was more of like an
It's much more
action.
the logical,
Exactly.
whereas this is not
Yeah.
trying to like logically make
Yes.
it make sense.
Yep. So nonsensical. Like we should journey in so
Yeah.
many places in this. And I think, the my work differs because we're not getting caught up so much in the story, right? I think we're not so much focused on retelling every little thing that ever happened. What I
Yeah.
want to know is, what did that feel like for you? What was the meaning that you took from your
Our
experiences?
interpretation.
Exactly.
And yes, what did we make it mean about
Yep.
ourselves or our situation or any like future thing that happens to us.
Yep.
Okay, that's so good. Yeah, I can totally see how now it's very clear how they're different.
Yep.
And I think that's why I've enjoyed this so much. Again, I haven't done traditional talk therapy, and I'm sure there's lots of benefit to that
Absolutely.
too. But for me, coming to you at the point that I'm at in my like healing journey of a lot of these, like I would refer to as like entrepreneurial traumas, but
Yep.
even deeper than that, like money stories and just
Absolutely.
things that we've dug into from childhood too. But what I've noticed is, like I can no longer try to make sense of these things. Like I have mentally moved on
Yep.
from a lot of these stories that have now resurfaced.
Yeah.
Because I actually have to heal them on a deeper level, on
Yeah.
a physical level for my body
Yep.
to release. Like I think our mind is always the one that wants to move on
Mhm.
faster. And we actually have to like give our subconscious and our physical body the space and the time and like this kind of work
Yeah.
to actually be able to release that from our body.
Literally. And I love how you say that because it's our brain is wired to avoid pain.
Yeah, like, oh, I've already
I
processed
don't want to
that.
feel that.
Like totally felt all those emotions.
Yeah.
Like now I'm ready to move on. Like,
Yep.
can we just like go on to the next thing?
Right. Yep. It's like we're hardwired to avoid pain, which is
Yeah.
beautiful. We need
It's
that.
biological.
Totally. We
Yeah.
need that. And then when we start to do the work that we do, we build the internal safety so that we then have the capacity to feel through the pain. The way that I like to describe, you could call it trauma, you could call it an emotion that is running our subconscious in the background. I like to describe it as this never ending revolving door.
Mm,
And when we have not allowed ourselves to like close the loop on an emotion, aka feel the emotion through,
yeah.
we are just spinning subconsciously, sometimes consciously, in this revolving door. And what somatic work does, somatic work is essentially movement, breath, and sound.
Yeah.
When we activate our bodies with those modalities, we put the door stop in the revolving door. Our body can do the nonsensical thing, aka process the emotion. We cry the tears. We say the thing that needed to be said to dad 20 years ago. We set the boundary that we needed to set, like, internally.
Hmm.
Then, the energy comes out of the revolving door. We feel the feelings, we process it. And then it's as if that revolving door never even existed. So it's interesting. A lot of times that I've had this experience in myself, when we allow ourselves to close the loop on a feeling or integrate with an aspect of ourselves who has been fragmented and lost in space.
Hmm.
The most interesting thing is it's very, very hard to recall the emotion after the fact because you felt it through and it's no longer buzzing in the background. Another way to describe it is like, think of like your iPhone. We're closing out tabs in our nervous system, in our
Yeah.
subconscious. Otherwise, these tabs are just running constantly in the background. And we're quite literally creating our lives from that energy, not even knowing that we're doing it.
Right.
Which is why this work is so powerful because we're accessing these tabs that we might have not even known to look at.
For sure. Yeah. So kind of taking it through like the example of our session today. I come in to see you, and I would say like usually I have something in my mind that feels like it's maybe a trigger or something that I'm
Mhm.
working through um that is coming up that we kind of lean into.
Yeah.
And usually it comes down to some sort of part or identity that needs to be heard or needs to be felt or whatever that is. Could you talk through like what are some of the parts
Mhm.
or identities that you see most commonly in especially women
Yeah.
or high achieving women, entrepreneurs, or just any women
Mhm.
really?
All of us. I first want to say it in a way to kind of help the brain understand what types of parts we might be experiencing in the body. And I'll give examples of those. So we have parts called what I would call like a protection part of us. A protection part of us, like I said at the beginning, could be our perfectionism.
Hmm.
It might be the part of us that um, kind of like boxes people out. Like we kind of keep people at arm's distance.
Sure.
There's many, many flavors of protection parts.
Yeah.
And these protection parts, they weren't made out of thin air. What these protection parts do is they protect what's called an exiled part. So an exiled part is usually a younger aspect of ourselves, not always, but typically it's a younger self who went through something big, who went through a big hurt and didn't know how to process it. So think if I was kind of like my first example, if I was a little girl who was feeling a really big emotion, I was crying, I was sad, I was upset, I was scared. And if I was met with aggression, quit your crying, I'll give you something to cry about. Go to your room. Oof. Okay. I take that on as I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not okay. So in order to survive in the world, I had to create a protection part that says, be perfect. Don't cry. Keep it all together. Be good. Be the good girl who protects this little exile. And in between is often shame. So these exiled parts, I feel like the majority of exiles that I see, like when it really comes down to it, is an aspect of self who feels fundamentally worthless, who feels not good. And I say it all the time, I haven't met a person yet who doesn't feel that way to some degree. Again, it could have been from our upbringing, it could have just been from society shaping us. We fundamentally don't feel good enough. And that creates, again, a cascade of problems, not only for ourselves, but in the world. So you see how our system then works when we are chronically living out of protection. This isn't actually us living an authentic life. We're just trying to keep these exiled parts at bay. We don't want anyone to see them because if we were shamed when we were little, again, in this example, we wrap a ton of shame around it, take on the belief I'm not good, and then just live life from that belief system. So I hope that answers your question. If we lots of different versions of this.
Totally. And as you're talking, my brain is just thinking like, is there any way to even avoid like having these parts?
Yeah.
Like, is this just part of being human and living a like human experience? Like,
I would think so, right?
I was like,
ideally,
you could have the most perfect childhood, and not that mine was perfect, but I would say pretty close. Like I have had a great upbringing. That is like truly like I feel privileged that like I had incredible parents. I had a great childhood, and I have an awesome sister, and like they're still my rocks, and like, but yet I still have parts of me, whether it was from, some experience even outside of that, or into my 20s becoming a young adult. Like I don't know if we can even avoid having these parts. So it's not a negative thing. That's what I'm trying to get at too, is like everyone has them. And that's why I think the work is so important, because this is how we become, that like best version of ourselves. And I think that's part of, if you want to go even like more spiritual, I think that's part of our soul's purpose, is to figure out what are these parts of who we are that we need to get to know and to love and to embrace, so that we can actually get back to who we came here to be.
100%. It's like we're here to reconcile this. And one of my personal beliefs, and maybe you feel similarly, is, we're not just reconciling the things that happen in our own life. We're also reconciling things from our ancestry. I think a part of this too is when we're born, we've inherited things from our parents and from their parents and their parents and their parents. And again, if you're looking at it from maybe a soul contract level, if that's what you believe in, maybe we came in, maybe this is a lifetime that we came in and we're like, I'm going to end this. I'm going to end these patterns. I don't want this to continue in my family line for, your children, if I have children, my children. We don't want this to continue. But I think, it's like there's no shame in having these parts of ourselves. And I think, to your first point, is it even possible to exist in this dynamic world and not feel some sort of way about it? I don't know.
Because, and I think just like we acknowledge how challenging like living in the world is. Like it's not an easy experience, but that's also the part of the point, is to discover and uncover and through some of these traumas to figure out what needs to be healed. I totally agree. Like soul contract, like what did I come here to learn?
Yeah.
And that's why, again, like doing this is so essential to your learning and growth and self-awareness and
Yes.
how you make an impact in the world and all of those things.
Yeah.
So we can even talk to in my session today, like the part coming through was shame, which I was like,
Yeah.
like never really acknowledged that this was something that I was carrying
Mhm.
for so long. And a lot of it really came from my, what I referred to as my entrepreneurial trauma,
Yeah.
like those years of like my age 20 to 30, growing up with my business, making a lot of big decisions at a young age, making mistakes, getting, kind of the shaft on a lot of situations and feeling really like naive and kind of taken advantage of, and so much shame around that period of my life,
Yeah.
which has showed up in other ways now, um, as I'm trying to really, step out of some of those identities that I took on.
Absolutely. And like I love a good shame conversation. I think it's uncomfortable.
Very,
And I don't think
yeah.
we talk about it enough. And I think every single person holds shame.
Mhm.
And if our shame has never been witnessed, we're just gonna keep living life from that perspective.
Mhm.
I can't remember, maybe it's Brene Brown who said this. Don't vote me. Shame needs a witness.
Mm,
And if shame is not witnessed, how can we ever actually get out of it?
yeah,
You know?
totally.
And it's like that's the way we actually diffuse it is by having someone lovingly see us in it.
Mhm.
And I think shame's biggest fear is that someone is going to validate it and be
Mhm.
like, yep, like you are worthless. And I think protection around shame would look like trying to keep all of that at bay. Like,
Mhm.
or you see people doing this, like I'm people who are highly self-critical. Like they might be like verbally self-critical toward like, it might sound like, oh, I'm fat or oh, I'm ugly or I'm this or I'm that. And it's as if they're trying to beat other people to the punch. Like they're expecting someone to like say the big mean thing to them.
So they say it first.
Exactly. Like you see, it's like another form of protection. You see this
Yeah,
a
the
lot.
self like deprecating
Yes.
talk.
Yep. Yes.
Mhm.
You see that so often. And again, when these shame parts have never been compassionately, safely witnessed, they're just going to keep running our lives. And like we said earlier, there's no shame in having shame.
Mhm.
Because who doesn't have shame? We've all
Right.
been through so many experiences that we internalized. Again, I'm bad. I'm wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong with me.
Mhm.
And I think it's so beautiful when we can have these conversations and just to put words to it. And I know in my healing journey, like, I've been doing this work now for probably 7 years just for myself, not
Yeah.
facilitating. And shame had been such a deeply ingrained part of my own experience that there would be days, and I want to even speak to the feelings of shame.
Yeah.
Because shame isn't just like it's not it's not like a logical thing. It's
Right.
a feeling
No,
in
it
the
is a
body.
feeling. Yeah.
There were times when I would literally just make a space in my spare bedroom and let myself feel shame
Mm.
and build up the tolerance to it and allow other people to see me in shame. And it was horrible. I'm not gonna lie, it
Interesting.
was
Yeah.
awful. Um, to willingly witness it and willingly feel it.
Mm.
And that's part of this is allowing yourself to feel through the emotions. Even with parts work, right? We can't bypass the actual sensation in the body that we've been
Mm.
holding. And just to name that for people, like if you're feeling shame, um, it is so heavy and it can feel like there's no way out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because as we were doing this, one of the questions you asked me was, well, what does shame, like
Yeah.
in your body or part of you, need to say? And it was just like her side of it, like the what she created, what my shame created was then this kind of story of overcoming. Like you made some maybe bad choices. You didn't know it at the time. But it also allowed you to have this like underdog experience and story, and also to prove that you weren't dumb and you weren't, insignificant or unworthy. Like you were just doing the best that you could at the age that you were at with what you had. So having her actually say like, well, what were the good things that came from this shame? Like feeling ashamed or embarrassed about some of the decisions you made that didn't pan out, but like what else did it bring you? And it was like the resilience and the overcoming and the I could prove that I could go from a really negative situation to becoming in a better state, or just that kind of eternal optimism. There were a lot of good parts that came from it too. So actually being able to acknowledge that these parts aren't inherently bad. They actually hold a lot of great qualities.
Yes.
But we don't always see them that way.
Yeah.
Hey, it's just me here interrupting the podcast to tell you about my favorite cup of tea and why this is such a ritual for me daily. I love the Rosarium from Inner Garden Botanicals, pouring it from my little tea brewer here. And for me, this just brings presence, peace, and calm to my day. It's a really simple yet essential piece of my evening routine. And I've even started drinking it more throughout the day, which, if you know me, I've always been a caffeine addict. And so this forces me to reduce my caffeine intake, slow down, enjoy and savor this beautiful cup of tea. I love the loose leaf blends from Inner Garden Botanicals, and I absolutely love everything that this company stands for, which is all about rituals, presence, peace, which is what I'm all about, and how we can support ourselves in the seasonalities of life. If you want to try out Inner Garden Botanicals, you can get 20% off your first order when you use my code SOULSISTER20 today. Cheers to bringing in some incredible rituals into our day today that support us and ground us in the present moment, like Inner Garden Botanicals. Hey, it's me interrupting the podcast because you need to know about one of my favorite organic skincare brands. And bonus, it is a small business, and that is Simple in Nature. I am obsessed. I started using the Simple in Nature organic body oil a couple years ago in the winter when my skin was so disgustingly scaly dry. And I had tried every lotion that I could think of. And I met Sabria and she was like, you need to try the body oil. And I'm obsessed. I barely skip a day. It is amazing. My personal favorite scents are Harmony or her current newest scent, which is Serene. It is lavender, vanilla, eucalyptus, and thyme. And honestly, I use this every single day along with my lip oil. And I use my sugar scrub a couple times a week to keep my skin hydrated, nourished, and healthy, not just in the winter, but all year long. If you want to try out your first order, head over to simpleinnature.com with the link in the show notes to get 20% off using my code STEPH20. Oh, hey sis, I am just putting on my favorite lip gloss, Small Town Beauty by Asia. This is my favorite color. It's called 23. It's hot pink and I am obsessed. She has so many different fun colors. She has lip treatments that can nourish your lips. But personally, I'm a lip gloss bestie and I absolutely love the human behind this brand, Asia. Her mission and vision is to make sure that just because we live in a small town doesn't mean we can't have incredible products like this lip gloss. So if you are a small town girly who loves a good lip gloss, you need to check out Small Town Beauty by Asia. And you can use my code to save $5 at checkout.
We're so used to seeing them through the lens of shame. It's like we're so ashamed of our shame parts, right? It's so
Yeah,
shame.
it's like,
More shame
embarrassment.
is within it. There's a book literally called No Bad Parts that I wish everyone would read, and it articulates all of this so well. But it's so true. Like we shame our shame, but then when we're willing to witness our shame and like take a step back from it and really see it for what it is, you see that it's not some scary monster hiding in the closet.
Hmm.
It's a little girl.
Yeah.
It's a part of us who had to take this on to be okay in the world, who had to shame herself so that nobody else could shame her,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too, is like literally seeing these parts very often, especially shame as like, or even picturing myself as like my 20-year-old version of
Yeah.
myself, right? Like being able to like actually like, envision hugging her and like reminding her of how good it gets and that,
Mm.
she's not alone and
Mhm.
she's not stupid for these decisions
Mhm.
made. And she's actually really brave and really fearless. And like part of me wants to go back to that kind of energy before the world gets so heavy, right? It's like
Mhm.
the very like naiveness.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing.
Mm-mm.
We actually like that. I think that's a really good quality,
Yeah.
to have that kind of like, "Oh, no, the world is good and who would ever do me wrong," mentality. But then, of course, life happens
Yeah.
and adulting happens, and
Right.
we just live in a world where there are going to be bad things that
Yeah.
happen to you. But to not become jaded and
Yeah.
not become this like rough exterior shell of a person
Yep.
that like can't let anyone in
Mhm.
for fear of seeing these sides of us or seeing weakness
Yep.
or vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think that is a really big part of it too, is like actually seeing those younger versions of ourselves as so beautiful and
Mhm.
so, I mean, wise, even if we didn't feel that way at the time, because we could actually hold so much grace
Yeah.
and brave,
Mhm.
like, willing to go first and do the thing because we didn't have that part or that experience on the other side of us reminding us, well, remember when that didn't work out.
Yep.
And I think it's difficult as life goes on to not let these parts overshadow
Mhm.
our next big dream or our next big thing we want to do because we maybe didn't have something work out the first time.
Right. It's like we are perpetually living life from that old lens. And we can't
Yeah.
even help it, right? Because
Right.
we don't even know that it's there half the time.
Hmm.
But I love what you say about like it's like the naivety, but it's innocence.
Hmm.
Um, and I think when we keep bringing these aspects of self back into integration, back into our safe adult body, our innocence can then start to come through again
Hmm.
in a very safe way, right? Because we are
Yeah.
adults and we
Yeah.
know how to keep ourselves safe now. So we know how to protect our innocence, but we can also allow it space to like shine through. I think of how
Yeah.
innocent to like play with our animals or play with babies and like just like we talked about, do something for the sake of just doing it,
Mm,
not for the sake of being productive or like
yeah.
getting something, getting some type of social reward.
Yeah. So that was a big part of our conversation today, too, was feeling like, and it all ties together, but like this shame part is also like tied to me feeling like so many of the things that I'm good at don't always directly tie to output or a result or a monetary value.
Yes.
And then because of that, feeling like, well, nothing that I have to give the world is really meaningful if I can't tie a monetary value to it, or that like ultimately comes down to that like feeling of like my gifts aren't valuable,
Mhm.
therefore feeling of worthlessness around anything that I'm creating.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of the conversation was too, was like not everything has to have a direct
Mhm.
output. And everything isn't measured around money and productivity, but that is truly the world that we live
It
in.
is.
So it's hard to not let
Mhm.
our gifts and what fuels us and our passions be reflected in that.
Yeah. And I think it's so brave when we're willing to even just acknowledge this because it is, it's us willingly pushing up against a system that has oppressed us for thousands of years. And I think it's such a beautiful act of safe rebellion when we choose, and it's not easy to choose it, but when we consciously choose to channel our creativity, channel our gifts into something um, that might not have monetary value. We can do something just for the sake of doing it. And I've had that experience too of like feeling not good enough, right? If we're not bringing in enough money, if we're not being productive enough. There were times when I was quite literally a workaholic and was doing way too much, was burnt out, sick all the time. And I was working with a really great practitioner at the time. And she's like, well, what if you just didn't do that? And I'm like, oh, how dare you?
How revolutionary of you. Yeah, how dare you
And
even
she asked
say that?
kindly just to help me just entertain the thought. And I'm like, everything would fall apart. And everything, meaning myself.
Yeah.
It's, I ask this question all the time, like, what would I have to feel in that? Like, what would I have to face in myself if I were to relinquish this identity? And it's not saying that we always have the opportunity and the resources and the privilege to stop working or stop moving, stop going. That's not realistic. But I think it's interesting when we can ask ourselves these reflective questions when we do have capacity and when we do have the resources in our life to be able to step back and be like, well, yeah, why am I actually doing this? What is the reason for this? Is it quite literally for survival? Which, yeah, that is definitely people's reality. Or is this an old version of me who's stuck in survival? Maybe it's both.
So that I think bringing this conversation about my session full circle was it really came back to this this feeling of needing to prove and needing to push and needing to like force outcomes and results. Because that is my default. Like I can push through anything. I can, and I've been rewarded for it and externally validated for my resilience and my, ability to see the good in hard things and overcome things and that underdog story and all of those things. But then when I try to actually just be in the present moment and have these moments of just literal presence. I'm so ingrained and trained to live in fight or flight because I literally spent, a full decade there. That being just okay in the moment is actually alarming to my body, and I will start to look for something bad that is going to happen in these beautiful moments of presence. Like I shared one with my son at the park the other day, and like I was observing how present I was being and how good it felt, and then all of a sudden all I could think of was like, what if he falls and hurts himself? like just like my brain going to these like horrible places because I'm so not used to things just being good and feeling safe and not having to prove and push and force and overcome. And like that is actually easier for me to do than to just be.
Absolutely. It's so
Which is crazy.
It's interesting to say it out loud, right?
It sounds insane.
And how many people, especially women, have that exact same experience.
Yes.
Yeah, I know I do. And it's when we've only lived life in fight or flight or lived many years in fight or flight. And if we've only ever been outsourcing our power, outsourcing our life force, it can feel really foreign and really unsafe for us to learn how to insource our energy, insource our power. And what I mean by insourcing is kind of a word that I made up the other day.
I like it.
TM. When we're learning how to insource our energy, insource our power, this requires so much self-trust and so much self-compassion, because again, we're so socialized to look outward for everything, for validation, to for the world to tell us that we're okay instead of the other way around. And again, there's so much power that we can start to harness back into ourselves when we willingly choose to insource our energy. And it can take some time because I think many of us are chronic people pleasers. We're overworkers. We tend to want, we tend to in
We
a way,
want external
yeah, we want
validation. Like, who
validation.
doesn't?
Right. It's like that dopamine hit. Like,
Yeah.
that's a good girl. I did a good job. And then the other
A
part of
plus
us is
student.
like, right, we got the gold star. And
Yeah.
again, like we like look at all
It
of our
feels
stuff.
good.
Right,
Yeah.
it feels good. And we look at the systems that we've lived in growing up, even our school systems. It's always about getting the grade, always about the A's, the gold star, the accolades. When are we ever taught that we're worthy just for being?
Yeah.
Just for breathing, for being a human that is alive. When are we ever taught that?
Yeah. Hey sis, if this episode spoke to you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our weekly conversations that drop every Monday. And would you share this with a fellow sister that needs to hear this message too? If you're craving sisterhood, soul, and strategy in action, I'd love for you to step inside our Sister Circle community, where we gather, grow, and build intentional businesses together in real life and real time. I promise, business is more fun in sisterhood. Until next time, keep leading with soul, honoring your season, and don't forget, I'm always cheering for you.